بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد. Inshallah, the topic today, as I said before, is about truthfulness. And truthfulness, it's something that's very important. And it's also something that can be easy for some people and something that's difficult for some people, depending how you train yourself or how you have been trained growing up. Can you hear yourself okay now? So, truthfulness, and the opposite of truthfulness, of course, is falsehood. The person is truthful or he's a liar. And there's nothing in between. So in the American culture, actually you might hear them saying things that are somewhere in between. Right? But in Islamically, we don't believe those things. Like you might hear them saying truth or half-truth. They also have half-truth, right? So in Islam, there is no such a thing, half-truth. It's also true or false. And they also have, in their culture, what they say a lie, and what they call a white lie. So they have a lie and a white lie. And of course, Islamically, that's not acceptable. So you are lying. There's no white lie or a red lie or a green lie. A lie is a lie. It's a lie. So we only have those two things. So for us to understand the subject, it's important for us to consider both. And we also need to think our own problems. Like sometimes we tend to talk about a topic and we mention how important it is in Islam. We hear it all the time. And we mention the ayat of the Quran, we mention the hadith that came with it, but then we forget to relate that. We forget to relate that to our day-to-day life. And because of that, sometimes it's not useful for many people. Of course, it's useful for someone who may be a good thinker, who if you just give them the basics and tell them the ayat and the hadith, then they can finish the rest. But all of us are not like that. Many people, the way they work and the way their mind understands things is if you give them examples. And those examples are usually something that applies in their life. And it's also true, many times when we have some lectures on certain things, we might give examples that are not relevant in our day-to-day life. Like we might give examples of something that happened a long time ago, 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, or 100, 200 years ago, something that's not relevant in our time. So we should, inshallah, we will try in this, that we give examples that are really relevant in our time that applies to us. And here, when I pick the topic here, I'm not suggesting that somebody is a liar or a truthful person. It's something that I'm trying to encourage myself to be as truthful as possible, myself, and to try to avoid lying, and even to actually not to pick up the kind of things that we pick up from this culture that makes certain lies easy, like the things they call a white lie. And also the certain things we picked up from our previous culture, where we grew up. Because we know we are not very good sometimes in telling the truth. So the truth, when you really think about it, is the key. Is the key to the iman. The truth is the key to iman. It's the key to becoming a believer. And you can see that from the Quran, in many verses of the Quran, And you can see that from many hadith. So if you look in the Quran, يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وكونوا مع الصادقين. So when you have taqwa, what happens? You become of those who are truthful. So the truth leads you to the taqwa. And you know taqwa is the basis for iman. So it's very important to have truthfulness. And if you think of the hadith, there's the famous hadith we always hear where the Prophet ﷺ was asked if it's possible for a believer to steal. And he said yes. To commit zina, he said yes. And many other bad things. And when people ask the Prophet ﷺ, is it possible for a believer to lie? And he said no. And when you really think about it, that's very dangerous. Because usually if you ask the average person what the truth means, truth, what is truth? They will usually say it's something you say. So you either tell the truth or you tell a lie. But Islamically it's more than that. It's not telling something that either makes it true or false only. That's only one aspect. The other aspect is your whole life is based on either telling the truth or not telling the truth. And what does that mean? For example, in your worship, when you are worshiping Allah, you have to worship in a way that's truthful. And the opposite of that would be, for example, the person might pray and fast and give sadaqah, but inside they are not sincere. So that means truthful and sincerity go together. Truthfulness and sincerity go together. So you have to be sincere about what you are doing. Otherwise you are lying. Your prayer is a lie. Your fasting is a lie. And your sadaqah is a lie. If it's not sincere, if you're not doing it only for the sake of Allah, if you give a speech, your words and what's in your heart have to match. So truth goes physically and verbally both in Islam. So if you are giving a talk, or if you are talking to somebody or giving a speech as a leader or whatever, your words have to match your heart. And we all know that this happens. Like politicians are actually a good example of that. Politicians can give a whole talk and a whole speech and everything they are saying is a lie. But people enjoy it anyway, right? And we shouldn't do that. As Muslims, we're not allowed to do that kind of thing. So if we give you a speech, it has to be truthful. You can have a speech that's very flowery and it has fancy words and it has something that excites the people and encourages them to do things and is uplifting. It can be all that, but it has to be truthful. And if you're not truthful, then it's no good. So in Islam, it's not just telling the truth. It's also believing the truth. It has to be both, believing the truth. So your deed and your belief have to match. Your belief, what you believe and your deeds have to match. Then you are truthful. If not, then it's not truthful. And we all know when we accomplish that, when we accomplish and reach the point where our deeds and our beliefs match, when we become truthful, your iman is strong. And when your iman is strong, it becomes easier and easier for you to tell the truth until you come to the point actually where you don't like lying and you don't like people who lie. And you know the opposite is true. Like we all know the opposite is true. If the person tells a lie, they say, okay, once a while, I'll only lie once a while, right? Or when I want to gain something or something like that, then I will say stop for a while, later. And then you lie today and you lie tomorrow, the next day you lie twice, and it increases until you get to the point where you are lying so much that you yourself do not know if you are telling the truth or if you are lying. And this is true, it happens. People who lie so much, they don't even know anymore that they are lying. They end up believing everything they say themselves. And we can all give examples. If we were asked, some people you know personal, who say, for example, you are with them all day. And then in the evening, we sit down for a place, for a tea or something, or we meet at the masjid. And then the person who's good at lying will tell the other people where we went today. And he'll talk about all these things we haven't done. He'll say, oh, we went there and we did this and we said this to that person. And it didn't happen. Right? He doesn't even realize the person with him will know he's a liar. They don't even realize it anymore. Like I remember one story in Somalia, I remember that people used to tell, that talks about when people end up believing their own lies. Like you lie so easily. And it seems simple. Like people sometimes think simple lies are not a big deal. This is what they call here a white lie. And I think in our culture we have the same thing. Maybe we don't have a name for it. But people, when they say, oh, it's just something simple. So the story was a man tried to find a job, and he kept going all day, and he couldn't find a job. And then after the Dhuhr time, he came home, and he's tired and he's hungry. He didn't eat. He didn't get a job. And then he decided he will take a nap to pass the time. So he got in his bed, and the kids in the neighborhood started playing in his yard, and they're making a lot of noise. And he couldn't sleep. So he decided he wants to send those kids away. He came to them, and he said, "Okay, kids, come here." And they all came. And he said, "Do you know the family of so-and-so? They have a feast today. They slaughtered sheep and everything, and they have a lot of food. They have a feast. And everybody's invited." So the kids start running to go to that family's house. Then he went to bed, and when he's laying down in bed, he's very hungry. His stomach is growling, and he thought and said to himself, maybe it is true. Maybe there is food in that family's house. He got up, he got dressed, and he went to that family's house. And of course, there was no food, and there's no feast. So he ended up actually believing his own lie. And people actually might argue, he was just sending the kids away. That was not a big deal. It's not a lie, but it is a lie. It is a lie. Something simple like that is a lie, and it's a big lie. And we all know the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. When the Prophet ﷺ, a woman was asking him something, and then she called her son. She called her son, "Come here, I will give you something." So the son came running to his mother, and the Prophet ﷺ asked her before the son arrived, "What are you going to give him?" And she said, "I will give him a date, a piece of date." And the Prophet ﷺ told her, if you didn't give him anything, a lie would have been written for him. Right? But for us, usually we think those things are not a big deal. You're just tricking your kids, right? You're tricking them. You say, "Go to bed, or the hyena is going to eat you." Right? That's what we say, right? Back home. If you don't go to bed, the hyena is going to eat you, or the bear is going to come and eat you. The kharab is going to pick you up. So go to bed. We think those things are not big deal, but these things are lies. You're lying to your kids. So it's better to discipline your kids some other way. There are many other ways to discipline kids and get them to do what you want them to do without lying to them. So those things we think are very simple, but they are not. So we have to be very careful of the things we say. And if we look at telling the truth in another way, we have to do it in different levels. One level is you have to be truthful to your Creator first, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You have to be truthful, which means you have to serve Allah. You have to do what Allah asks you to do, and you have to refrain what you were asked to refrain from, which means you stay away from the haram and you do the good things. That's how you become truthful. It's not something you say, it's something you need to do. And it's something that you have to have in your heart, that you're doing it sincerely for the sake of Allah. And you have to be truthful to yourself also. You have to be truthful to yourself, which means if you decided to do the right things, at least physical, you should try to be sincere about it. You should train yourself to be sincere. And you have to do it for the sake of Allah. So you are being truthful to yourself. Being truthful to yourself means also that you are able to criticize yourself and tell yourself the truth and admit things before you admit to others or before you ask Allah for forgiveness. You should be able to tell yourself the truth that you might have committed a sin or you have a weakness. You have a weakness. Or say, for example, you have a weakness where you have a hard time praying all your 5 prayers a day. So you should be able to tell the truth to yourself. Or say you have a hard time keeping a man, which many people have. You know, if someone trusts you with certain things, you have a hard time keeping the aman. So you should be able to talk to yourself. And this is not simple. And it's not something that doesn't happen, that I'm not mentioning now. It does happen. Like people have a hard time being self-critical and admitting. That's actually the best way to reach a position where you improve yourself. If you cannot tell yourself the truth that you are missing your prayers, you cannot tell yourself the truth that you're actually becoming a liar, you cannot tell yourself the truth that you are cheating, then how are you going to correct it? It's impossible. You will never improve, you will never correct yourself. And this is what it means in the Quran when Allah mentions an-nafsul lawwama. An-nafsul lawwama, the self that can criticize itself. That's what nafsul lawwama is. You criticize yourself. You can be self-critic. And when you are self-critic, it's something that's really good. Nafsul lawwama, right? If you are not nafsul lawwama, that means you have a nafs that's very low, right? Which is the nafs al-ammara to bisu, right? An-nafsu ammara to bisu, the one that orders you to do the bad things. And you are not self-critical and you will never correct yourself. So you have to start criticizing your actions. That means being truthful to yourself. You have to be able to tell the truth to yourself. If you cannot do that, you're not going to tell Allah the truth, and you're not going to tell the other humans the truth. Which means actually your own iman and your Islam is a lie. That's what the hadith means. When the Prophet said a Muslim does not lie. A Muslim can commit other sins, but a Muslim, a believer, cannot lie. Why? Because he's lying about his belief. When the person is habitual liar, right? The person is habitual liar. They lie all the time. They are lying about their iman also. Then when the person becomes truthful and they start telling the truth, it leads them in the Qiyamah, in the day of Yawm al-Qiyamah, it leads them to Jannah. In the world, in this world, we all know the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that the person who tells the truth, people around him, people will be attracted to that person and people will love him. And when people love you, Allah will love you. And vice versa. You tell the truth, Allah will love you. And when Allah loves you, people will love you. So it's success in this world. It makes you a better person. And everyone will respect you, that you tell the truth. But in the day of judgment, also, it saves you. It saves you in the day of judgment. And in one ayah, Allah says, قال الله هذا يوم ينفع الصادقين صدقهم لهم جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها أبدا رضي الله عنهم ورضوا عنه ذلك الفوز العظيم. ذلك فوز العظيم. So to be truthful is a great success. So the ones who are truthful in this life, their truthfulness will benefit them. Their truthfulness will benefit them in the day of judgment. And that will lead them into Jannah, where rivers run beneath, underneath. And they will abide in that Jannah forever. خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا أَبَدًا. And those people who are truthful, Allah will be pleased with them. And they will be pleased with Him. And that is a mighty success. Whoever achieves that, achieved a mighty success. So, if we take other examples, And inshallah, tonight we'll shorten the lecture a little bit. So maybe those viewers who are here can have more discussions and maybe make some comments. Because it's very important for us to encourage each other to do what's right and to be truthful. And it happens sometimes somebody may not be aware of some of the mistakes they make when it comes to telling the truth or telling a lie. They may not be aware of it. So when we discuss it and give examples, you don't have to give an example as a person or even say, I did it, or so did it. But we like to make those examples as general and say, people do this. Or I heard somebody say this, and that's a lie, or something like that. So inshallah, we'll do that for a few minutes. So, for some of the examples I can think of. So first, I will do that. Some of the examples I can think of, one of them is between the parents and their children. And we mentioned some of it already, where the woman, the Prophet ﷺ asked her what she's going to give her son. And she said a date. And the Prophet ﷺ told her, if you did not give the date, a lie would be written for you. And we all know, as parents, many times, and many parents tell their kids things that are not truthful. Like some promises. You tell them, okay, you're getting C. If you get B when the school ends this year, I will buy you Xbox, or I will give you this. And you have no intention of giving it. You have no intention. Or if you do this, I will take you to Somalia, or something like that. And you have no intention of doing it. And that's a big problem. The other one is the ones that kids learn, and we were not intending to talk for them. A good example of that, and we all know this, that you are sitting with your kids, you are home, and your wife, or the wife with her husband and her kids, and you are talking on the phone, right? And somebody calls, and the person is telling you, I've been looking for you all day, what happened? You're supposed to meet me in such and such a place. And you're home with your wife, or your husband, and your kids. And you say, oh, I'm so far, I'm south of Burnsville. So I will be coming home 8:30 after Isha. So please, just be patient with me. 8:30, I will give you a call. Then we will meet. And guess what? You're teaching your kids how to lie. And lying becomes normal for them. You're immediately teaching your wife and your kids how to lie. There was a guy, actually I remember in Somalia, who was, he was a businessman actually, he was a rich businessman. But he used to do things in a way that was funny, so people can remember it. Not funny in a bad way or a lie, but he said things in a different way. One time, one of his kids was a troublemaker, and he was 5 years old, and he was so much trouble. And people started giving that kid names because he was so tough. So one time, the man, the father, was sitting with other grown people, and his son came, 5 years old, and he brought 20 shillings. This is when 20 shillings was a lot of money. This is like 1980. He brought 20 shillings, and he said, Abbe, I found this 20 shillings. So the father gave him 1 shilling, and the boy ran away. And he says, the kid is so much trouble. Everybody knows him. Some of the other parents, they asked him, how did you manage to make your boy, who we all know is so much trouble, to be trustworthy and bring the money? He told the grown-ups, he told them, because I teach my kids to be honest and not to steal. But you people, most of you, he said, you teach your children and your wives how to steal. And the grown men, they got angry. Like that time I was young, actually I was there. I was young, I didn't have kids. They told them, those of you who have kids, you teach your children and your wives to become thieves. And they got angry. They said, what are you talking about? You are assaulting us. We don't teach our wives and our children to steal. They said, I will teach, I will show you how. He said, when I come home from work, he owns stores, and I bring money. And he said, if my son, that one who's a troublemaker, is home, or the other sons, or my wife, I tell them, come here, count the money. They count the money. and I give him the key, and I tell him, put it in that box. He puts it in that box. It's his money. He counted it, he put it there. Who's going to steal it from? And he said, but you people, when you come home with money, you look around to make sure that your wife and the kids don't see you. You look around, you look left, you look behind, and when you know they are not there, you open the box and you stuff the money in the box. And sometimes your kids and your wife and others will see you, and when they find money, they will look around, and when you are not there, they will hide it. So you teach your kids. I give that example to illustrate that we are doing that. When you are sitting with your kids, and you are talking on the phone, and you are telling somebody, when you are home, you are talking on the phone with your family at home, and you are telling somebody that you were supposed to meet, oh, I'm driving the car, I'm in Highway 94, I just came in from Wisconsin, right? You are teaching your kids to lie. You are telling them lying is okay. That's one of the easy examples that we do all the time. The other easy examples that people do not even feel, right? People do not feel, is when you threaten your kids and then you do not carry out the threat. That also is a lie. You tell your kids, listen, if you do not finish your homework, I will not do this and that for you, right? Say, for example, you say, if you don't finish your homework, I will not give you dinner. And your child says, no, I want dinner now. But now, who's the boss? You're supposed to be the boss, the parent, right? And you tell them, no, go, do your homework. If you don't do your homework, I'm not giving you dinner, right? And then the kid cries. And when they cry, you say, oh, he's so much trouble. Eat your dinner. No good. You are causing yourself so much trouble. For one thing, you are lying. For the next thing, you just lost your kid. Because you just lost control of your child. When you do something like that, you completely lost control of your children. You're supposed to be firm with your kids. Do not make threats if you cannot carry them out. And the parents, like me, have to listen to that very carefully. Do not ever threaten your kids if you cannot carry out the threat. If you tell your son or your daughter, even when they are 2 or 1, sit down, they have to sit down. If you cannot make them sit, and you know you can't, don't tell them to sit down, right? That's another example where we might end up teaching our kids how to lie. The other one is the one I mentioned earlier, where we make promises to the kids. That you promise them things, and you have no intention of fulfilling that promise to them. You just think, okay, I'm just encouraging them, right? No, but you have to be honest. If you are encouraging them, you tell them, I will do this for you. If you do this, you have to do it. You have to do what you promised when the kids do what you ask them to do. And this is what that ayah means in the Quran. لِمَ تَقُولُونَ مَا تَفْعَلُونَ. Allah says in the Quran. Why do you say something that you will not do? كَبُرَ مَقْتًا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَن تَقُولُوا مَا لَا تَفْعَلُونَ. Right? It's a great sin. It's a great sin in front of Allah that you say something that you will not do. So if you say, I will do such and such for your kids, do it. Right? The other thing is, the kids also, this is the kids, the younger ones. Their parents may be very truthful, and they always tell the truth. And they teach their kids that lying is bad. But then they deal with their peers in the school. And many of them lie. Like they go to school, and their friends tell them, do this and this when you go home. And you say, no, no, my parents don't like it. They don't want me to do this and that. They tell you, oh, what do you mean? If they catch you, lie to them. Tell them, I didn't do this, this and that happened. Make excuse, right? They call it excuse. Make excuse means lie. That's all it means, right? They gave fancy word for lying. Make excuses, right? When you're making excuses, you're lying, right? Your teacher says, where's your homework, right? You went to sleep, right? You fell asleep. You just decided to sleep, or you played your Xbox too long, right? And you went to sleep, and then you went to school in the morning, and you say, my homework, the dog ate my homework. That's what they call it in America, right? You're making excuse. You say, oh, I did my homework, and then my little brother, just before I went to sleep, cut up all the paper and threw it in the garbage, and it was already 11 o'clock. I had to go to bed, right? See, they're laughing. They know what I'm talking about. But that's a lie, right? You're lying. Can you lie to your teacher even if he's not Muslim? No, you cannot lie. The other one that comes so automatic to most people, Muslims and non-Muslims, right? You're driving in a highway and the speed limit is 65, right? And you're going 80, and then the cops come after you and they stop. And they always say, almost always, I think always, when the cops come to you, they say, sir, how fast were you going, right? And you say, oh, I was going 65, 69, maybe 69, right? You're lying. You knew you were going 80, right? I swear. And then guess what? When the cop gives you a ticket for 80 miles, and you knew you were going 80 miles, and this happens, and you know all of you what I'm talking about, people go to the court to challenge. And when they go to the court, they swear. I've seen many Somalis do this. Actually, I had some of them ask me to become a witness for them, and I refused, right? They asked me to become a witness. This cop, you know, he just hates me because I'm black, right? So can you go with me to the court and say that you were with me in the car and that I was only going 70 and the speed limit was 65? He said, no, I'm not going to say that because I wasn't with you. And if I were with them, I would say, no, but you were going 80, right? And they don't like it. They say, what's wrong with you? Who are you with? You know, which side are you on? And you know that happens all the time. People go to the court, and in the court they swear that you will tell the truth, nothing but the truth. So help you God, right? So help you God. That means that you're swearing in front of Allah, right? Even though the guy is a kafir, he's swearing you by God. And you swore. And then you are saying, I did not go 70. And the cop here is saying, I have the radar print out. He was going 80. And you say, no, I was only going 70, right? That's a lie. So these are the examples of the lies that people do. The bigger lies that are more dangerous, that causes trouble, is when people go, for example, into business. And we all know this happens all the time, right? The person smooth talks to everybody else and tells them, I have this great scheme and great plan that will make all of us millionaires, right? So bring all your money. And everybody brings whatever they have, the 5,000, the 10,000, and they put it together, right? And the person doesn't have any good idea. He just wants to make a living, right? He just wants to make a living on other people's money. Yeah. So that person is lying to the people, and they may look good. You know, some of those people, you see them in the masjid, you see them maybe even teaching Quran and things like that, and you say, this person is very honest, I trust them. I can trust them. If I trust them with my kids to teach them Quran, why can't I trust them with $10,000? That's not a big deal, right? So that has actually multiple crimes in it. You lie, and you are stealing other people's money, and you make false promises, right? And what are these three? What are these three things? The person lied, and they broke the promise. They promised they would make money for you. They broke the promise, and they broke their trust. What are these signs for? Munafiq, right? That's the three signs of the munafiq. If the person has one of them, he has a sign of a munafiq. He may not be a munafiq, but if the person has all three, that's a big problem, right? The person is a munafiq. So sometimes the truth, the not being truthful, leads you to other bigger problems. So inshallah, I will stop there. And the main reason why I stop a little bit early is I want to give people 5 minutes, 10 minutes chance to give us examples like the ones I just gave. Because it's hard for me to think about all the simple examples. Because those simple examples actually are the ones, the big example, for example, I just gave for someone tricking people from their money, that's obvious, right? But what's not obvious to people, and they may not think about it, unless someone really encourages them, is the simple ones. That you say automatically, you say automatically, oh, I wasn't going 60 miles, right? It just comes out so automatic, right? And you are with people and you are talking to them, and somebody accuses you of something, right? The person says something, and then you decide to take revenge, and you accuse the person of something that you made up, right? You just made it up, just to take revenge. You cannot do that as a Muslim. You have to be strong as a Muslim. If the person even is wrong against you, you're not supposed to take revenge by lying, because lying never becomes halal. So lying is allowed only in 2 instances in Islam, right? Only in 2 instances. If you are reconciling people, and you tell, for example, the husband and the wife are getting divorced, and you tell the husband, your wife loves you, I talk to her, something like that, right? And the other time is when you're saving your life, right? So, go ahead.
Let me remind you one very common for everyone in the community now.
Okay.
We are using our cell phone, somebody calls, and you don't want to talk to that person, you just look at you and you just ignore, like you are not answering. Everybody sees you that you are right. Or somebody calls you from home and you tell your children, tell them not to go home.
Yeah. So that's similar to the one I was saying before. Like someone calls you, your kids are there, and you tell them you're home, but you tell them I'm in Burnsville, right? So that's true. That happens a lot. And or I'm not home. Like you tell the kids, like you tell them I'm not home, right? Especially when somebody calls from Somalia and you think that they are looking for money, right? Like the one they had, they made a cartoon. I'm sure most of you saw it, of a man, he's under the rug. He put himself under the rug and his wife is holding the phone and she's telling him, come out, the call is not from Somalia. You can come out. Right? And the other actual example that the call from Somalia reminded me is this happens a lot. That somebody asks someone money from Somalia, and they say, when can you send me money? And you tell them, I'll send you money on Saturday, right? And somehow you couldn't, right? You couldn't do it on Saturday, so the person called you on Sunday, and they said, you were supposed to send the money yesterday. I didn't receive any. All you have to do is tell them, listen, this and this happened. Like for example, you had a check, the check didn't clear. Or whatever happened, if you tell the person, it's not a big deal, right? It's not a problem. The person is not going to hate you. But what do most of people do? They say, oh, they didn't send to you. I sent it in Dahshil. They are back. I'm just going to them. And I'm going to ask them why they didn't put your money through. I gave the money to them. And then you go to their office and you're very angry. But the person over there is angry. He goes to that company's office and he's telling them, I just talked to my brother, or I just talked to my uncle. He sent the money. It's you who's the problem. Right? This is very common, right? Okay. So who has another common? Yes.
Yeah. What about the residence when you write the residence?
Yeah, this is what the Americans call you embellish. You do some embellishment, right? You put flowers on your accomplishments, right? If it's a complete lie, right? If it's a lie and you just made it up, then it's haram in Islam. As a Muslim, you cannot do that. You cannot say I have a bachelor's degree from Harvard University and whatever, right? And you don't, right? Or you say I worked in company so and so for 10 years and you worked only for 1 year. And I have 10 years experience. You cannot do that. The ones that are acceptable is you use fancy words. That's not a problem. Like I remember a person was writing with one of my friends, this is years ago. He was helping one of my friends write a resume. So when my friend was going to college, that time he finished college. He's looking for his first job after college. So he doesn't have other experience that is applicable to the kind of job he wants. So he told him anything you did before. So one of the things he did was he worked in a pizza store, and he also drove taxi. So he wants to write, I drove taxi from 99 to 2004. I drove taxi from 2004 to 2008. I worked in a pizza store. He wants to write something like that, right, in the resume. And the guy told him, no, you have to write from this year to that year, instead of driving taxi, write professional chauffeur, right? Professional chauffeur. And he said, the years you were working in the pizza store, did you make the pizza? Yes. Did you put all the stuffing and everything? Yes. Right, a professional chef. So that's embellishing. Yeah, what do you do? But if you make it up, you never worked in a pizza store, and you never drove taxi, and you claim it, then that's how. Yeah.
Non-Muslims and Muslims, who lies more? You compare.
I don't think you can say it in the two groups. You cannot say it in the two groups, because there are some Muslims who their culture, a part of their culture is to tell more lies. And I think the Somalis are one of the worst when it comes to lying. And for example, if you compare, the Malaysians are Muslims and the Somalis are Muslims, right? If you compare the two, you can say which one lies more, and it's obvious, like who lies more, right? Same thing with the non-Muslims. There are non-Muslims who lying is not a big deal, but to most of them, at least especially the Americans, lying is part of their culture. Some of the things we talked about is acceptable, like the white lie. They call it the white lie, right? And in their culture, actually, they train you. Like, for example, when they train you to go and take an interview, one of the things they teach you is not to say no, or I do not know. In Islamically, that's praiseworthy. When the person is able to say, I do not know. In Islam, that's good. In this culture, it's bad, because you are negative. So, for example, the person asked me, do you know how to fix boilers, for example, right? And I don't know. So instead of saying, no, I don't know, you mention some things that are similar to the boiler, and you say, but I can learn. I can transfer my skills, right? I have a skill set that are transferable on fixing the boilers, right? So you're not supposed to say no. One good example actually is of that culture, because all non-Muslims do not have that same culture. The Canadians are totally different. There's a guy, I tell this story actually, some of my friends sometimes. There was a guy, this was in the mid-90s. He is a reporter at the Canadian Broadcasting Company, CBC. And he made a documentary about the culture difference between the Canadians and the Americans. So he had a list of questions. He would ask Americans to see how they answer. So some of the ones I remember that he did was, he went to Harvard University and he talked to a historian in Harvard, and he asked the historian, he asked him, the war in Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan is a province in Canada, right? It's like a state in Canada. He said the war in Saskatchewan now, only the Air Force is used. Do you think that they should use the ground troops? There's no war in Saskatchewan. The guy doesn't even know what Saskatchewan is, right? He said, oh, if you're going to war, you might as well go all the way in. I think they should send the ground troops, right? The Americans cannot say, I don't know. In another example, I remember, he went to the governor of Alabama, and he told the governor of Alabama, he said, in Canada we have a problem. He said, as you know, our parliament has been meeting since our independence. We meet in Igloo in Ottawa. Igloo is the ice house, you know, the ice house that people in the North Pole use. They dig ice, and that's where they live, right? It's called Igloo, right? So he told him, our parliament meets in Igloo. And now because of global warming, our Igloo is melting. And we need to protect our heritage. Can you help? And he said, me and the people of Alabama that I represent, we will help you and give you all the help we can so you can protect the heritage of your people. Right? He doesn't say I didn't know your parliament met in Igloo or anything like that. He didn't say that because in this culture you're not supposed to say I don't know.
That's the difference between Muslims and Kuffar. Because Muslims, Islam says saying that I don't know is half of the knowledge.
Yeah. And for them, it's actually good.
Yeah.
Not to say I don't know. They think it's good. So it's a big problem. Actually, there are many other things, like other examples that we don't do as Muslims, or very few Muslims do, that they do very commonly, is making jokes that are completely a lie. Muslims can make jokes, but they cannot be a lie, right? So jokes, so you have to be careful when we're making jokes, right? If the joke, for example, is something that doesn't exist, for example, like something that completely doesn't exist, which is like the fairy tales, right? That's different. But if I'm making a joke, and I make a joke about the American president, and I make up a completely false story about him to make people laugh, that's lying. In Islam, that's haram. And you are defaming the person at the same time. Even though you are making a joke, you are still making fun of the person, or a group of people. Like you say, or the Spanish are like that, the Egyptians are like that, the Somalis are like that. And you are lying. But you're doing this just to make jokes, and you are making up a lie. So if you're making a joke, the joke cannot be a lie, it has to be true. So inshallah we'll stop there, and we will try the next halaqah. I think we're going to have, I will confirm before next Friday comes, one of our friends, other people will come speak. And I think people enjoy when we have a circulation. Inshallah we'll ask Sheikh Hindik to give one, maybe next Friday or the one after. Inshallah. Right? And even some of the young people have to volunteer.
Muhammad is ready.
Yeah, you ready? Yes, the young people is true. We want some of the young. The purpose here is not that we are experts and scholars, right? The purpose here is we get together and we learn from each other, right? And not only that, this is a good place actually to train the young people to learn how to speak to people, right? Huh? Yeah, the youth. So it's good that you guys can prepare something. And even if you are kind of nervous, we can give you 10 minutes or 15 minutes or something like that, right? And then you get used to it. So inshallah we'll stop there.